notice how the evening news can sound like a promotional for a disaster movie sometimes? Massive flooding, giant mudslides, relentless hurricanes, and record-breaking tornadoes are often the top stories.
Now, this dramatic weather leads some people to theorize that global warming is changing our climate and directly affecting our weather conditions. Well, they argued that global warming results from a greenhouse effect created when air pollutants collect in our atmosphere, trap the sun's heat, and alter the climate.
Scientists acknowledge that global temperatures are rising, but they also agree that there are no simple explanations for why this is happening. And the role that humans play in this warming is hotly debated.
Well, look how hard it is for your local meteorologist to predict the weather. As you'll see in the following CNN story, it isn't easy for any of us to get a grip on the global climate.
Valentina Denisova shovels snow for a living. Is she a believer? Yet. I don't see any real global warming, she says. I haven't noticed any real fluctuations in the temperature. Nor are there many converts along the Florida coast, large portions of which are supposed to go under as the globe warms and the oceans swell.
Nobody asks really questions about global warming. All what they want is just to come here, enjoy their life, be in the best place in the world probably, and if they are in the front of the water, the better they are.
The threat of global warming is a front-burner political issue that has not caught fire in the streets. I cannot say anything, says this Berliner. I know nothing about this. A CNN USA Today Gallup poll found that 35% of Americans worried a great deal about global warming in 1989. Many photo ops, and 8 years later, only 24% were greatly worried.
It's not something I worry about, I'll tell you that. I don't know. It's hard to say whether it's something that actually exists or not.
Not all the skepticism is on the streets. There are scientists who question the link between what people have done and what nature is doing. Those melting glaciers are not yesterday's news, they're last century's news.
You have these news events. People are taken to Glacier National Park or to Alaska, and they're shown a glacier that has been retreating. And the assumption is it's due to global warming. But then you look at the markers, and the retreat began around 1820. That's not due to global warming, at least not for man.
Street translation?
There's been a history of the earth being warm, and then it gets cold. We're in a warm spell right now.
Beyond what's causing the warm-up, some skeptics are certain that the models used to predict the climate do not and cannot deal with the delicate complexities of how the Earth ticks.
The atmosphere is very complex, too complex to be put in a global model and integrated seasons, multi-years, and centuries into the future. It's just too complex to be done.
Street translation.
Basically, I think that there's a lot of things that go on for scientific evidence that people grab on that are fads and that are not proven out. You know, 1 week coffee is good for you, the next week it's not good for you. One week you're supposed to take vitamin C for colds, next year it's zinc.
There are scientists who think the conventional wisdom is a sincere effort to do the impossible, assume a range of possibilities, and reach a consensus prediction on the climate 20, 50, 100 years from now.
If you take the high assumptions each time, you have something very frightening. If you take low guesses each time, you have a non-problem. So you come back to the question of how risk-averse are you now? Because I think in the end, it's not just unknown; it's really unknowable how serious the problem will be.
Street translation: anything could happen.
It's going to be more rain and more mudslides out in California and all that stuff. But New York, they didn't say nothing about New York. I read in the Star, they didn't say nothing about New York. They said New York going to be okay.
Critics agree the globe is warming. Their questions revolve around specific elements within that general agreement. How much will it warm up? What will happen? How much are humans responsible? And what can or should governments do about it? In the end, skepticism is a matter of degrees. Candy Crowley, CNN, Cambridge.
As you can see, the average person on the street doesn't give global warming too much thought. But you're about to meet a high school teacher that believes the more you think about something, the better off you'll be.
His science class is discovering that learning about global warming doesn't lead to one opinion on the issue, it leads to many informed opinions.
Carbon dioxide now, what's this doing for us?
Not much good. Welcome to Global Warming 101.
some animals and plants. It actually affects them as well. It can mutate their DNA and affect their production as well.
It's a tough job making concerns of the world relevant to the concerns of an American teenager.
Right now, I'm just trying to live and enjoy my life, so.
I'm a big biker, and I look at the bikers that ride in Japan and stuff. They're all wearing these face masks, and that's just kind of scares me.
Nothing works like color.
Go ahead and use all of it.
When students take balloons filled with automobile exhaust and pump them through a test mixture, the liquid's deep sky blue turns an ugly, smoggy yellow.
That's just gross.
Teacher John Hall applies the lesson to everyday cruising.
So when you burn in your car a gallon of gas, you create 5,000 liters of CO2 gas.
I mean, I think it, matters a lot, but, it's not really affecting me, this second necessarily, but, it'll affect, future generations.
And my dad was telling me about the theory that it's not really due to the pollution, it's just kind of natural trends the Earth follows.
Other natural sources, what do you think? Volcanoes. Really, volcanoes are a huge source of this.
Hall says he cannot preach, but only teach.
I think that by putting it within a scientific framework and not saying, don't drive your cars, it's bad. Instead, I say, here are some things that carbon dioxide does that affect us.
He says he's got to let the future generation decide on its own, which he adds, teens will do anyway. Greg Lefebvre, CNN, San Francisco.
What's your opinion on global warming? Do you have the information necessary to analyze and assess the situation? Think about it.